Okay, everybody, welcome to another RobCast. It's called I'm Rob, and it's a podcast, so it's the RobCast. And I have with me the one and only Patricia Riggen. Patricia, welcome to the RobCast.
Nobody knows who I am.
They will. They will in no time. You all know my beloved friend Carlton Hughes, who I interviewed recently. Carlton says to me recently, you have to interview Patricia Riggen. And so she's here. She agreed. She came over to the back house. And there's so many questions I'm going to ask her that I'm so excited to ask her. But, you know, if Carlton says you need to do this, then you do it because that's how the world works. So, Carlton, if you're listening, thank you. Feel free to send all people my way. So, Patricia is a film director, has a huge movie coming out.
It opened yesterday.
It opened yesterday, and we're going to get to that in a minute. But let's start way back. You were born in
Mexico, Guadalajara.
Guadalajara,
That's the second largest city in Mexico.
the second largest city.
So it's like, 7 million people. It's not a little town. It's like
7
LA.
million.
Yeah. With
And
a lot of art, intellectuals, writers through history. Very pretty city.
what kind of home did you grow up in? What did your parents do?
My father was a surgeon.
Oh, wow.
My mom is a poet.
A surgeon and a poet.
Yes. My mom is a real writer. She's a Mexican woman, so she didn't really develop her career like she should have. She wasn't allowed to go to university, for instance.
Really?
Back in the day, upper middle class women weren't allowed to go to college. So she was really smart, really talented, and she just didn't have that opportunity. But she's a playwright, she's a poet, she's a mother of 5.
Was she frustrated growing up?
No, she never
So she loved her life. Kids.
said anything about it. But I look at myself and the opportunities that I have and that I created for myself.
Right.
They weren't really given to me that much. But at least I wasn't told not to go to school.
Yeah.
So,
And were your parents like, you can do anything, just work hard, everything's possible?
no, it was a very conservative family, very Catholic, especially conservative to women. It's a very different concept than here, saying conservative. It means woman at home, family is the first thing.
Yeah. Dad goes off to
Not
work
career.
each morning. So having a career was not a priority. That was not encouraged. That was...
It was it, it's very strange because of course my mom took me to all the national spelling bees and all the contests that I was part of because I always was like the best student growing up and also a big sports girl. She took me everywhere, but at the same time growing up, once my teen years kicked in and I got my period and everything started changing. It was the priorities changed, and it was like finding a good husband. That was like the thing. You got to find a husband with a good career, she said. I'm like, Mom, what about my career? I don't want to find a husband with a good career.
And where did you get those? Because I assume you had friends who were like, okay.
Oh, yeah. Basically, I come from a place where, unfortunately, most women don't have careers. I mean, they did go to school, they read and write, but career is not something that is, in their.
Right. So where did it come for you?
I'm smart.
I love
I've
it.
always been really smart.
You knew there was more.
Always from the beginning. First of all, I always felt I was in the wrong place. Wrong family, wrong society. Even though I love my family, I'm very happy, beautiful, close family, but I was in the wrong place. Always knew that. So I just had to get out. And of course, I wasn't allowed to leave. So for instance, when it was time for college, I found the two things that didn't exist in Guadalajara, to study so that I could go abroad. Film,
Film?
film. And the other was international relations, like diplomacy. And my mom said, absolutely not. Figure it out however you want, choose whatever you want here. You're not leaving this city. You're not leaving home. Because in Mexico, you don't go away for college. You stay at home.
Oh, you stay in
You
the
go
city that you're
away.
from.
You stay in your house, in your parents' house.
You live at home and you
Absolutely.
go to university that you can go to each
Yes.
day from your home.
And then afterwards, you can go away for a master's degree. But now you're 21, you're older, you're more mature. They checked you out during those 4 years. Now I understand. That I have an 8-year-old daughter, I'm going to do the same thing, but without letting her know. I'm just going to move to wherever city she chooses.
So when we think of the American university experience with frats and sororities and that's just not
No, absolutely not.
campus life, everything they say.
Doesn't exist. And
Doesn't
by the
exist.
way, I read the other day an article about how this whole living in the university has a lot to do with the university making money and not necessarily with studies,
Right.
and
I think we
development.
all know that.
So,
Becoming a good student is
yeah.
low on the list. So you left.
So I didn't leave. I wasn't
Oh, you
allowed to
stayed.
leave. So
Okay.
I couldn't study film. I didn't go to film school. I chose communication sciences, which had one film class in the last year. So I waited 4 years for one film class.
And were you drawn to film? Did you know you wanted to do
Yes,
something?
yes, always.
From way back when?
From my middle school, probably.
And did you know you wanted to direct, or
No,
was
I
it just
never
be
knew.
involved
I never
somewhere?
knew, and I'll tell you why I never knew. Because I'm a woman. And that means I never saw a woman doing it. It never occurred to me that I could be the boss. And I just knew I had to be there, but I didn't know what. So I thought writing, I guess because my mom writes. I thought, okay, writing. I'm a screenwriter. I'm gonna be a screenwriter. But it never crossed my mind. But I did my thesis. My thesis work, my paper to graduate was called Mexican, sorry, female directors from Mexico or something like that. So I did my thesis on female directors, and I
Really?
interviewed them. There were four.
4 Mexican film
Yes,
directors
and I
that you could
found them
find that
all
exist.
that existed. That was it. I found them. I conducted really long interviews. I analyzed every word they said, so I knew, like the psychology behind what they were saying.
And you're like, what at this age? 21?
Yeah, 20. Yeah.
And did you think I could do this?
No, it didn't.
You still, even in interviewing
No,
them.
no, I did not. But I always knew I didn't know my place. So everything I did well. Like I was in the advertising, I was a copyright, I was a photographer. I worked throughout the whole my college, making money, because I had to leave.
Right.
So once I finished college, I was ready to leave because my parents wouldn't give me money to leave. That's like supporting your
Right,
child to
exactly.
go
That's the last thing they want to do.
astray and get in trouble, get pregnant, get in drugs. So when I graduated, I had my own money. I was ready to leave, and so I left. And it still
But you
didn't occur
still
to
had,
me.
I don't belong here.
Always,
Always.
always. So I went away. I started working, you know, jobs, and then I eventually landed in Mexico City. Oh, oh, I know how I got into film. I remember now. I was a journalist. So I started writing in a newspaper, and they gave me a column, and I would write about interesting characters, maybe what you're doing with your podcast, which is, I would find like, this lady who was the first, the ballet dancer in Guadalajara who used the first tutu. And it was a scandal, because she wore the
Right,
tutu,
right.
that kind of characters that are just super interesting. And a film producer from Mexico City, her name is Berta Navarro. She's the producer of Guillermo del Toro. She
Oh,
produced
wow.
all his films. She was the top producer at the time in Mexico. She read the column and she called me up and she invited me to write screenplays for a television series that she was going to start in Guadalajara. So that's like I jumped right into the arms of,
Sure.
let's say, Scott Rudin or some big name like that.
Yeah.
And so I was suddenly walking around with her in parties and in the workplace and just meeting every single person in the film business in Mexico. being nobody, but I was just listening to all those
Taking
conversations,
it all in at a
taking
young
it
age.
all in.
Extraordinary.
Yeah, and then eventually I decided, I got a very good job. I started working in the business. I was an AD, first AD in like American commercials and in American movies that would
Assistant
come to,
director
not first AD, second AD, yeah, assistant director, and then first AD in
on
other
American
things,
commercials.
American
Like
commercials.
what?
And okay, so like, where I met my husband, my DP husband?
Yes,
I
director of
met him
photography
in
husband.
a commercial shot by Zack Snyder. You
Oh,
know who
Zack Snyder.
Zack?
Yeah, that's
Zack is? Zack is the director of Superman.
Superman director.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he used to be a commercial director and used to come to Mexico to shoot commercials, and I worked in his commercials. So
And just kept getting more and more opportunity.
yeah, eventually I moved into production. That's a very normal. There's two things that happen to women that are in film in Mexico. They become producers or they become screenwriters. That's basically the two things that they really develop in. There's all of them,
Producers,
and
screenwriters.
screenwriters. All the directors were men in my time. And so I was a screenwriter and I was a producer. And I got a very, very good job in the Mexican Film Institute. At the time, it was the only production entity in Mexico. There were no studios. So this was basically the studio owned by the government. And they support first time directors, second time directors, third time. So Iñárritu, Cuarón, and Del Toro, and myself, we all started making movies for the Mexican Film Institute. They financed our first movies. So it's a really awesome place that helps out because when there was no private money,
Yeah.
in order to keep up the cinema of a country, you have to have that kind of support. So I got a job there, and I was the executive producer of the short. I was in charge of the short film department. So I was in charge of making all these shorts for all the young male directors that came. You know,
And how old are you at this point?
I was like 27, 25, 27.
But it's still
I was really young. It was all
men are the
suits.
directors,
Yeah.
and you, the ceiling is just
Yeah, I was.
screenwriter, producer, just whatever.
Yeah, yeah. And I had a lot of opportunity. Now I see it, now that I'm older, how those opportunities, would have happened if. And also, I have another thing. I was from Guadalajara. I don't know. Of course, that's something that might not mean anything to anyone here, but it's like second-class citizen. You're not from Mexico City. You haven't been exposed. You didn't go to film school. You didn't.
Got it.
You're like from, like it's so centralized, Mexico.
Around Mexico City.
Mexico City has it all.
That's
The
it.
rest of the countries in medieval times, in terms of education and culture and opportunities. It's been changing, but it's really centralized, really.
So you are a woman
Mm-hmm.
who didn't go to whatever the prestigious film school is from a conservative Guadalajara.
Mm-hmm.
So all the odds are stacked against you doing anything.
Yeah, but I have a really good job back then. I'm like 25. I'm carrying a briefcase. I'm making money. I have like a driver, and I sit with all these like 25 men in suits, government, guys, deciding, things, and I'm unhappy. I was always unhappy. I knew I hadn't found my place. So I thought, I have now more money. I've been saving. Now I should go do a master's degree, and I'm going to go to New York. And that's what I did.
And
I used
Colombia,
I
right?
used to be like a super Woody Allen fan and Martin Scorsese fan. So for me, like New York was, it didn't matter what school I went to as long as it was
Was in
in
New
New
York.
York. So I looked them up. I found that there were two schools, Columbia University and NYU. I went to New York to visit, and I walked into the two of them and asked the questions. And I decided I liked Colombia because I love the trees. The campus was very pretty. And the other thing I noticed was that writing and directing were exactly in the same place. It was the same school. And in NYU, it was separate. The
Separate.
writers were in that floor, and then the directors were in this other floor. So I just thought, even though Columbia didn't have the reputation that NYU had back then, it had that combination of the two things that I think make a good director. So I applied to that one school. I didn't know you have to apply to like 10 different, I just applied to that one. I got in. I got a little bit of financial aid also from them. And I moved to New York. And the day I walked in the street, that I landed, I just felt happy. And ever since, I've been a very happy
No way.
person. Yeah.
By the way, what did your mom think of you going to New York City?
Fine. By that point, at
By
that,
that point, she
my
was okay.
parents, yes, and my mom changed a lot. My father passed away when I was 21,
Mm,
and my mom has grown a lot through the years and has realized that they were very extreme and very conservative, and I'm an independent mind, and I know what I'm doing.
yeah. And this feeling that you had from way back, you land in New York, and you're where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, yeah. It's you know what? It's being in a place where you are allowed to grow, where you can, really just grow as much as you want, as much as you can. Whatever you want to do, you can just try it, and there's an opportunity and a possibility. Unfortunately, in Mexico, it's like you throw a rock and you're really, strong, and you can throw it really far, but there's a wall in front of it. The rock will never pass, will never go far. And that's the feeling, I was finally in a place where I could just be myself and be as hardworking and as smart as I could, and that it would take me as far as
Right, there was
as
nothing in
my
the way.
yeah, as I'm allowed to go. I still have the same feeling, although I've been finding other things through these years. I'm still a woman in this country. It's still a problem, but.
So then from there, you go through Colombia, then you start making films.
And then in Colombia, I thought I was a screenwriter. That's just, that's what I thought. I said to when I was in Mexico, I'm like, okay, if I'm a writer, I need to give myself the space and the time to be a writer. It's getting late. I'm getting old. I need to do it. I need to like,
You're
just
27.
just do it.
You're getting old.
Yeah. So I'm like, I moved and I said, okay, I'm a writer. What happens the first day I arrived there? My English is my second language. I can't be a writer in this country. It's just too hard. I can do it, but it just takes like 10 times than if I was writing in Spanish. So immediately I realized in my exercises that I should, you know, that like all my I was directing also my exercises. So I wouldn't put any dialogue. I would tell all the story visually with no dialogues. I couldn't write it. And I started getting honors in every class, and everyone wanted to, be part of my projects. And I'm like, why? Why would they want to help me out with my directing, with my shorts? I guess they looked really good. They were very successful shorts, and I realized that that's what I was. From the first time my first exercise I did, I knew I was a director. I'll tell you what happened with my first exercise that I did my first
Fascinating.
semester.
Yes, tell me.
I did a little we were told you got to do a documentary, with whatever you have. And so some of my classmates did like, my 2-year-old nephew walking the first time, that kind of thing. And I found this story right in my building. I made friends with the handyman, and his name was Richard Fontanelle. And he told me, I was photographed by a very famous photographer when I was a little boy. I'm like, who's that? Gordon Parks. So I'm like, okay, Gordon Parks. So I did a little research to see who Gordon was. And he was a, young black man, like he was 33 at the time. He was photographed when he was 3. And one day I'm reading he told me all about his life. I'm reading the New York Times, and I see there's an exhibition in this museum of the city of New York showing Gordon Parks pictures. And I asked Richard, do you think your family pictures are there? He says, yes. And I said, okay, let's go together. Let me get a camera. So it so happens, Richard's family were 10 kids and 2 parents. They're all dead except for Richard. And, I want to understand what happened. Gordon Parks published this story in 1968 about poverty in Harlem, trying to explain what was going on, the riots and everything. And he chose the Fontanelle family. So I interviewed Richard, I interviewed Gordon Parks.
Who's still alive?
No, he passed
No, at
away.
that point.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was, of course. I interviewed Gordon Parks. I brought a camera from Mexico because I was a producer in Mexico, right? Brought in some like Betacam, fancy camera back then. And I took him to see the pictures of all his family that was dead. And it's so emotional and so beautiful. And just extraordinary. And I cut it together, I edited it, and then I put it in the drawer, right? For 5 years. I finished school. I made my fiction short, which won the Student Academy Award, and that I was awarded $5,000. So I thought I should finish that documentary with the $5,000. So I hired a composer. I edited it again, and I finished it, and then I submitted it to Sundance, and it got in, and it won the jury award. And that was like $500. That's what it cost me, that short when I shot it.
Yes.
When I went to Sundance, that festival, I realized I spent more in my trip to Sundance than what I spent making that
Then you
movie.
spend making the movie.
Yeah.
So,
So that was my first exercise.
and you're working in your second language, and that's why the visuals become so predominant.
And I still don't write. I mean, I co-write things. I have a bunch of stories that I'm dying to tell, but I always kind of stay away a little bit from writing because I always know that my tools are not the same as everyone else's. I'll get there, maybe.
Yeah, but it's just so fascinating to me how often when people have something that's a perceived limitation, it actually opens up all sorts of different avenues of creativity. Like
Absolutely.
this door wouldn't open, so I just tried a different door, and that's actually the door that turned out to be the interesting one. So you end up directing films.
Yeah, so I directed my first short, and it won the Student Academy Award. And it's like a big deal in school
Yes.
awards. And the Emmy, the Student Emmy, and the DGA Award, and he won all these awards. So I finished school. Now it's time to leave because I don't have a working visa, right? I'm Mexican. And by the way, Mexicans, we can't apply to the lottery or anything like that. We're banned. There's no way. So I applied for a work visa, and they say, if you have any awards like these ones, name them here. And all the ones that they named, like these ones, I had. So I put them all. The Emmy, the Oscar, the DGA. And then they gave me the visa
DGA is Directors Guild
of America. And they have a
Literally, the form says if you have any of these an
Yeah.
award like this, you just happen to have all those awards.
all of them. And they gave me the visa in 24 hours. In 24 hours.
They're like, we want
So
you to be here.
they don't discriminate. I love it. Mexican woman, it didn't matter that I was Mexican. They just gave me my visa. 24 hours. It was beautiful.
And
So
that
I-
is such a good story.
Yeah, I moved to LA. So now it was time to come over here.
Yes.
Stop with the, New York dream. Now I had to get to work, and I came over here, and I had I got involved with developing a script that was very beautiful, interesting, about a little boy, Mexican boy, that crosses the border looking for his mother,
La misma Luna.
Luna,
Yes.
who works here as a maid.
Yes.
And of course, we know 100,000 of those ladies, right? And so when I arrived here to LA, I realized the hundreds of Mexicans that are in every single service area in LA, the gardeners, the cleaning ladies, And it just was a strange feeling for me to see all these millions of Mexicans
Yes.
here. As working, servicing the town, it made me feel there were two cities.
Yes.
The city of the servant and the city of the served. And I just felt, compelled to write them a love story, a love letter with this movie. And I got a deal. I have another little anecdote. I had a deal with a studio for my first movie. It was gonna be a $1.2 million, and it was okay. I'm like the luckiest person in the world. I have a deal with a studio. They're gonna finance my first movie. I'm nobody, and they're gonna finance my movie. And then I realized that they weren't giving me the assurance that they would distribute it. When I heard that, I said, I don't think so. I just why this it's why make a movie that goes straight to video? I can't do that. That's not what I need to do. So I say, okay, give me a window, a festival window. You guys decide the movie sucks. You don't want to release it. Give me a festival window. I need to sit down and watch the movie in a big screen. We can't do that. So I walked away. I walked away from a studio deal for my first movie, and uh, and I felt my hair was gonna fall from my head. And I went to Mexico City. I went to the Mexican Film Institute where I used to work, and I asked for, the money, the funds that Cuaron, Iñárritu, and all of them got. And I got half of the financing from there. And then I got an American investor, equity investor, and I produced it myself. I made every single decision in this movie, and I then went to Sundance, which where I had that little
Yes.
short. So they let me in because they received like thousands of movies every year,
Yeah.
and it's not a very like festival movie. It's a more commercial movie, and I premiered it one night, not in the big theater, the small one, because it was a Mexican movie in Spanish. Who cares? I didn't have like the big studio heads in there, just the little assistants. But by the time the movie, ended and we had this huge standing ovation, all the studio heads were outside and they all wanted to buy the movie. And I sold it in one night for $5 million. I made it for 1.5. So I gave the money back in like a day to my investors, plus 100% returns.
You
It was a nice night. I actually went to sleep thinking, please, God, please let it not be a dream. Please, when I wake up.
have this be real.
And when I woke up, it was real. It had happened.
So and at that point, you're a Mexican woman from Guadalajara.
Yeah.
Um, you're,
But then
you're,
things got hard. I'm telling you the nice parts.
yeah.
All the great,
Tell me and as you made your way in Hollywood,
but then everything changed. Here's
how
the
did it
sad
change?
part. So, you come out of there, the movie is sold, everyone talks about it. The movie makes pretty good business. It made like whatever, 24 million dollars in the box office. So I feel like it's awesome. I'm gonna get all
Right,
these
right.
offers. Nothing. Nothing. I, of course, also have to attribute part of it to the fact that this strike started back then, the
Mm-hmm.
SAG strike and the writer strike, and then the economy. That's when the economy fell here in the country, and I think production went down a lot. So I walked out and went to meetings every day for a couple of years, and nothing, nothing, nothing.
Were you so discouraged?
Yeah, I was tired. I was just tired because every time you prepare for a pitch, you direct the movie in your head. You come up
Yeah.
with all these beautiful ideas on how to fix the script and everything you're gonna do, who you're gonna cast, and you come in and you like give yourself, and then nothing. And I knew I was doing a good job, but just never got anything. So, when I read the stories about, there's been quite a number of stories lately in the New York Times, LA Times, etc., about being a female director. And I read the stories of how a guy that made a movie that made $1 million and then he got, whatever, Jurassic Park or like humongous movies. And I see that I made a movie that made 25 and I didn't get like good morning, nothing. I understand that there's also, that there's a difference. There's clearly a difference
Yeah.
in the steps that women are allowed to make after huge successes and the steps that men can make, after. fair successes.
It really is that difficult. The game really is rigged that much.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. Well, I know there's a lawsuit going on right now. Have you heard of this?
No.
I think that the women have organized themselves, the female directors, and they're doing like a case, whatever lawsuit, I don't know what those are called.
Oh, a class action.
A class action to try to demonstrate the discrimination. The truth of the matter is statistics, right? So there's like a, I don't know, like a 7% female directors in television. So probably in film is less. And they have to hire hundreds of them, of directors, right? So they were publishing these statistics every year, and they couldn't, they kept saying the studios is just because, men have more experience. What can we do? We need to hire men because they have more experience. So then they did a new study, and they checked all new first-time directors, the hiring practices of new first-time directors, same exact percentage. So basically, a bunch of us comes out from school. We're all new. We are going to do it for the first time. There's 100 of us, and there's still going to be 5 women that are chosen. And that's when that's a very revealing number for me.
Yes.
Very revealing. First-time directors, same percentage. That's only
Yes.
there's only one word to describe that, because all the excuses are,
Right.
you know,
Right.
they're a lie. So anyway, I'm lucky. I've been working nonstop. I'm very, very fortunate. Um,
You're very, very lucky and very fortunate, and the game is still rigged.
of course,
Yeah.
of course. But I consider myself one of the very lucky ones that is working nonstop ever since. I've made 5 movies in 8 years, or I've been making a movie every 1 to 2 years. That's a pretty much a world record right there for women directors. Seriously,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
forget the minority thing. That's not important. Just in terms of women, and I could work tomorrow again, but I want good projects. I'm just not, I just want the bigger, more interesting, the ones that they give to the guys.
I love it. Okay,
Yeah.
now let's talk about the movie that just came out. My friends always make fun of me that I don't know how to say miracles. Miracles? They always laugh. Miracles from heaven.
I'm not the one that can tell you if you're saying it right or not.
So this big movie, big release, Miracles from Heaven.
It's a small movie. It's getting a big release, but
Small
it's a
movie, big
small
release.
movie.
How did you first come across this movie? How did it first get? Did someone come to you and they said there's this book
No, they came with the script.
with the script?
There was a script that was developed by the producers at Sony, and they were the same producers of Heaven is for Real, which I had seen, and I thought it was because I had seen that script years back. It was one of the million scripts that got sent to me that I never, either get the meetings or get the jobs.
And that's about a boy who dies. And
He goes to, well, he talks about a heaven experience, but the interesting thing about that one is that the little boy is saying things that he would have never known.
would have not known about.
So it was a very interesting
Yeah. So those producers
story.
then find this script.
Same exact producers, very interesting people. Joe Roth is amazing. He's
Yes.
one of the top, really just smart filmmaker. I'm just so impressed by him every single time I talk to him all these years. Is And then T.D. Jakes, which is a mega pastor,
Yes.
and Devon Franklin, I think this is his first movie that he really produces on his own, because he used to work for Sony as an executive.
And they come to you and say, "Do you want to direct this?"
Well, they don't do that. What they do is they send you the script and they say, "Do you want to come in and talk about it? You want to talk about how you would direct it?" So you come in, they don't say anything if they're smart, and you talk and you tell them what your point of view is. You tell them how you see it, what you would do, what you would change. And, when I walked out of there, I knew I was going to get the job, of course,
Why do you say, of course?
because I'm overqualified for this movie. I had just come out of the mine. I had just
Yeah,
directed
you
the
just directed
33.
33.
The 33 was huge, was so hard, was such a big, difficult movie to make that, for me, this one was like, okay, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go direct Miracles from Heaven. That's
Because
how
you
I
spent,
felt.
for the
That's how
33,
hard the other one
because
was.
for the 33, you spent how many hours a day in the mine?
14 hours,
For
35 days, 6 day
30,
weeks.
6 day weeks, 35 days in a row
Inside a mine.
inside a mine.
Yeah.
You were exhausted when that was done. I can only imagine.
You live you work in a very dangerous environment. You wear a hard hat and boots and are always, waiting for the rock to fall in your head. I was working with 33 men, Hispanic men. There's a reason why I left Mexico. And then suddenly I'm like stuck with 33 Latin men in a mine. And they are all like macho, very, what's the word, chauvinistic?
Yes.
Misogynistic.
Yes, yes.
Some of them are. It was tough. It was very tough. Um, and then there were many, many other complications, undescribable complications. So I finished and I thought, I gotta make a really easy movie right now because I really want to
So you
rest.
made a movie with Jennifer Garner.
So I thought, this is a really easy one. You can drive to work. You can be in a building with air condition. That was a good start because I had to be in hospitals and things. I'm of course very familiar with medical things. I'm born in a doctor's family.
Yes.
I grew up going to hospitals with my dad, and I know a lot of doctors. I know how they talk. And then of course it's about a mom. I'm a mom. I'm really good with actors. I think I am. I love performances, and so I just thought it was easy. It wasn't easy. There's no easy movie.
And what was the most difficult thing about it?
Oh my God, it was difficult. There's no easy movie ever. The most difficult thing in this movie is I got a script that was really, I just thought of that movie and I thought, who's gonna want to watch a movie about a little girl that's dying? It's like this is Hollywood. This is not like Europe and the festival world. Nobody's gonna watch this movie because it's just that. So for me, the challenge was how to make it a really beautiful cinematic experience and bring a lot of visuals into it and fun and laughter and be able to really, let the audience, be able to stay through this movie and enjoy it,
Mm-hmm.
even though it's a very, hard subject matter.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I'm happy to report that we tested it back then, like a month ago or whenever, and we got a 98 and from the audience, and that was like, oh, good sign. People really, really love it, and it's beautiful. You do go in for a cry, a good cry, but you come out really happy and really like renewed. So
And the crux of the movie is this girl who has this
incurable disease.
incurable disease falls
Well,
30 feet.
so she's been sick for a while. Mom is struggling, right, to get her diagnosed first, to get her help. And they just live a really tough life because she can't eat. She needs to be too fed, things like that. And she is back in her backyard. There's lots of trees. And sister is like trying to cheer her up and says, let's climb the tree. They used to be climbing all the time. She hasn't done it in a while. She goes up and she falls inside the tree,
Like a
30
hollow.
inside the tree, 30 feet down on her head. It's completely hollow. I went to see it, completely hollow. So, of course, the firemen come and, hours to rescue her because, the tree's very old and they can't cut it and all of that stuff. And then she, they finally bring her out. She's perfectly fine. Nothing happened to her. Nothing. Nothing. Scratches. But the most incredible thing, of course, is that a few days after they realize she's in no pain anymore. And she never ever takes any of the 25 medications that she used to have to take every day. So, I interviewed the doctor who's, completely, let's say, agnostic, put it somehow, a scientist.
Mm-hmm.
And then I met the girl, I looked at the tree, and it's just pretty incredible. But the movie's not only about that. I put other things.
Like what?
For me it was important that when I read it, I thought, okay, so yes, it's about a miracle. It's pretty great, but what are we gonna give the audience? Because this thing happens to like one family every decade, maybe. I don't know how often something like this
Right, right,
happens,
right.
and what about everyone else? What about the rest of us?
Yes.
And so
Who?
I basically brought in another message in the movie, which has to do with, that's why it's called miracles, because the journey and the learning of the character is how all these people around them through these very difficult years came out to help them. So it's about human kindness, it's about acts of kindness and the little things around us that just help us through. And that's really the message, that God is right there helping you out in the tough situations. You just have to be aware and look around you, and you'll discover it.
So good. So
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. And now people really come really happy. They really do,
Yeah.
out of the movie theater. Because it's true. I've been through difficult situations, and there's been like little like angels that help you out in times of need. Those those are good people.
Yes.
They're little miracles.
I totally agree. And now you're on to the next thing,
Yes, I'm just celebrating my A plus cinema score
which
that
is a
I
big
got.
deal.
It's a
Well done.
huge deal. They gave it to us yesterday, opening day. Apparently, it's a very rare thing to get an A plus. Very few movies in history have gotten an A plus. So I'm really excited about that.
And now, how do you personally, how do you celebrate? Do you have like rituals with your family? Do you have something that you do when you're celebrating something like this? Besides, obviously, coming over to my house.
No, we celebrate every day just being together.
Oh,
I have an
beautiful.
8-year-old, and we just use every opportunity we
Yeah.
can to be together and to be happy and do anything, cook a meal,
Yeah.
make movie night, we do anything to be together. That's a big celebration.
That's how I feel. And then nothing set next.
No, I worked back to back these two movies. They were hard. I've been just so busy and I haven't lived my life at
Mm.
all.
Because a movie is all encompassing. It takes everything.
Everything, absolutely everything from me. Sometimes, I drive in the street and I see people sitting in like a coffee shop talking to each other, and I kind of recognize that activity from the past. I'm like, what are they doing? They're having a coffee with a friend. Things that I haven't done in years. I've worked really hard for a long time, and I'm now debating with myself, should I stop? Should I
Mm.
now, spend a little time with myself and with maybe my friends want me back. They don't, I
Yeah.
haven't seen them in a long time. I haven't had any social life in a long time. I want to be a little bit more with my daughter, and I give her every minute, every living minute that I'm not working goes to her.
Yeah.
So therefore, I haven't done anything for me in a long time. Now, am I gonna take the time off? Who knows? It's the big question.
Because we're all trying to figure it out.
Yeah. And I was telling you about, deciding if I try to pursue more personal projects now, or I keep putting myself out to direct other
Yeah.
people's
Yeah.
movies.
Yeah. I'm I'm so happy for you. Well done. Congratulations. And you are at I love what we were talking about earlier, and I love for RobCast listeners that we never stop figuring it out. And whether you take time off, whether you do another big thing, whether you make something that you've just had in your heart for a while. Um,
Yeah. I have to tell you something. I'm not like it sounds right now like I'm this success story, and it's not been like that at all. It's been tough.
yeah,
And I've
I
had
picked that up.
several movies that have just been very hard to make, and not successful as one would expect. And you still make a beautiful movie that costs you a
Yeah,
lot of hard work. There's so many elements around that you can't control.
yes,
And so I've had a lot of questions these years about what am I doing?
yeah,
Um, how can I be happy?
mm-hmm,
I kind of stopped being happy for a while. Again, I'm trying to find my happiness again. And then yesterday I come back from Miami promoting the movie. I get picked up by a limo, right? That you get the limo treatment when you're like promoting a movie. You never get it before
yes,
when you're making the movie.
yes,
And he's a screenwriter, the driver, and tells me, "You done it. You're right there. You're living the dream." And then I suddenly realized, like, yes, I have to be so grateful. I mean, this guy is driving the limo, and he's a screenwriter. He's trying to get his movies made, and I'm here like bitching about my life, and like,
yeah. How hard it is.
and I'm making movies, so I have to be very grateful. But but it's I also have to find my voice again.
Yes, yes.
In
Man,
any case, I'm very excited that the movie is doing so well, and hopefully, cross my fingers, this weekend is a box office
is the
success.
big weekend. I loved hearing your story. It's so inspiring. And I loved the down parts as well as the up parts. And I loved the tenacity, the perseverance. And I loved how you said you didn't feel like you were in the right place, like something was off, and then you just kept moving until you were where you're supposed to be.
And I feel that right now again.
Yeah,
And I guess I need to remember that. So it's kind of cool that we're
right.
talking about it, because
Well, there's this interesting thing where no matter what you've done and what you accolades or accomplishments, where you have to like start over again and return again. And I actually think success can muddy the waters even more.
well, it's something that I'm not worried about,
But
the
but
success.
I mean the what is what is the next step? Sometimes, well, I do this thing and people love it, but that's different than, like you said, what will make you happy. And sometimes when you're younger and you're just starting out, there's a certain desperation, and then later with success, returning back to that can be a little trickier.
That's
But
exactly
it's
how I
still the
feel.
same sort of rebirth process. It's just is a little bit at a higher altitude, or there's more complicating factors, but it's the same. It's still the same questions. What's the next thing I ought to do? Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Ladies and gentlemen, Patricia Riggen on the RobCast. You heard her here. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
I'm
and go see
so
Miracles from
go
Heaven.
see Miracles from Heaven, and
It's a beautiful movie.
we look forward to see what you do next.
Thank you, me too.